Hey, this is Julia Rebecca Myron, aka The Messy Meditator, and this is the Messy Meditator podcast, where I'll be getting into the topics of mindfulness, messiness, and life. So let's get into it. So, in this episode, I sat down with Doreen Downing, who I've known for quite a few years now, and she actually helped train me to become a speaking circles facilitator. And you'll hear us talk about speaking circles in this episode. Doreen Downing is a fearless speaking mentor, psychologist, author, and host of the Find Your Voice, Change Your Life podcast. Doreen once suffered from stage fright. In conquering her fear, she found her voice and discovered that being connected to her essence, the authentic self, is the key to relaxed and confident speaking. She is passionate about helping others overcome anxiety and express the amazing essence of who they truly are so they can speak up and be heard. Dr. Doreen Downing, thank you for being here.
Oh, I love hearing that. It reminds me that I really am passionate and it is based on my own life experience. So I'm glad to be here with you and see where we go with this topic today.
Yes. So I have had the pleasure of knowing Doreen for a few years now. She helped train me in speaking circles, which is a unique and what I consider profound approach to public speaking or just speaking, really. And it totally changed my life. The Find Your Voice, Change Your Life podcast is the perfect name because that is what happens. And I have a few topics about the voice that I'm excited to talk to you about. I've wanted to talk to you about for a long time, actually. But before we go down that road, I want to dive into you a little bit more in your path. And so, while you don't explicitly call what you do mindfulness, I think it is in a way a mindfulness practice because it's about speaking from presence, and presence and mindfulness are basically one and the same. And so I'm curious which came first, the presence practice or the finding your voice? And how did you embark on this path to where you are now?
Great question. That takes me all the way back to when I was in my program at San Francisco State getting my master's in counseling before I even went on and got the PhD in psychology. And I was having some problems. I've just been out of a relationship and I went to the health center to start some therapy. And that was the beginning of a long journey to today. I would say that the therapist I found and eventually have this long-term relationship with is a mindfulness teacher about at the time, I mean, this was, I don't know, 78, 98, 78, 1978. How many years ago is that?
We don't have to count.
Yeah. Okay. So it was the beginning of my journey to heal and be more fully comfortable being myself out in the world was with a therapist who was based in mindfulness. And I'd already been drawn to Buddhism because I had lived in Malaysia.
I never knew that about you.
Yeah, as a Peace Corps volunteer, and took my first meditation class in Singapore. So I was already leaning towards that and seeing that personal development and personal growth had to do with, I think, what we now call mindfulness. At the time, it was called awareness. I don't even think, that many years ago, we called it mindfulness.
Yeah.
But so that was the beginning. And I think that individual work and becoming more self-aware, more, self-regulated, learning about who I am, and not only who I am, but what's possible, the depths of what's possible, even, what is the soul actually. So I would say, first of all, was my introduction and attraction to what we now call as mindfulness.
And then where did the finding your voice come into it?
Well, I think somewhere along the line, I realized that even though this was later on, many years later, after I got my PhD and had a pretty successful practice in Berkeley, California, and was still seeing this therapist, I realized that I was hiding in my office behind my PhD, and what I was hiding was that I was really more of a sensitive type, quiet type, and I avoided public speaking, any public speaking, even around, you might say, the extended family dinner table. There wasn't a lot of room for me. Other people were more verbal. Uh, there was just it was harder for me to find space to be myself, even around some family situations. So you just navigate as a quiet person. You just kind of, and psychology, hello, that was my strength. So no wonder I picked it as a profession. I could listen deeply to people and pull out really amazing kind of insights by the way that I know how to listen to people. So, but at the same time, to answer your question around, well, so what about finding your voice? I would say that I came to a point when I realized that I was kind of hiding in my office, doing work that was comfortable. And there are stories about how I tried to go out into the world. And when I was diagnosed as a diabetic, I realized that it would be great if I could go out and be on the speakers bureau. But I never completed the training, because when we got to the last time, we had to come and give the talk that we were going to be giving out in public to various populations who might have benefited from what I had to say about my journey to discover, hello, I was a diabetic. I didn't know it. I just couldn't do that last class. So I just held myself back and didn't step up to that. And, eventually enough of those opportunities come a knocking, and at some point I said, okay, I need to take my first class on overcoming the fear of public speaking. And that was at a local community college after I had a PhD in psychology.
And so did you know right away that you wanted to do something with that professionally, or was it
No, no, no. I
how
just,
long did it take?
well, let's see. It was several years, actually. I was working on myself, getting stronger inside. I
Mhm.
did Toastmasters and spent several years there learning how to give speeches, which that really wasn't what my journey was about, actually. I mean, that was part of it, but I realized that where I was still afraid was deep down inside, and I needed to do a deeper dive. And I think that eventually that's how mindfulness and awareness came to play, was that doing that self inquiry and listening to myself, being with myself, being able to quiet myself so I could hear, why was I still afraid so deep inside of me to come out? And I would say that I did, beyond Toastmasters, I did acting classes, I did improv classes. And then this invitation to uh, Lee Glickstein's speaking circles came across my desk, only they called it transformational speaking circle. I'm not even sure he called it speaking circles at the time, but it was about it was a transformational experience. And that's what I wanted was, something's holding me back. I want to transform my ability to be more expressed in this world. And that was the beginning. That was the beginning of an opening to more depth, more inner work. And it was pure exposure, I think, that in a safe place, that had me come back over and over and over to the speaking circle process.
And then I'm assuming once you experienced that, that was probably more of the moment where it was like, oh, this is what I want to do more of. Because
Yeah.
that was my experience with speaking circles, is like, there's something here for me.
Yes. Yeah. And it was the experience, like you say, the experience of it. It wasn't anything you could read about and get. You really had to put yourself smack dab in the middle of this room that where you feel like your fear is overwhelming you, but then you realize that people are listening in a new way to you. They aren't listening for content. They aren't listening for the ums. They aren't listening to give you evaluation at the end of your speech, because it really wasn't about speeching. It
Yeah.
was about being with yourself and with a listener in such a way that this now moment that is shared, and we call that relational presence, that now moment that is shared is that we are both listening to what is coming through me or up from what's inside of me, which is a whole new way of speaking. So it gave that little that little one, that little precious one who is hiding, room to come out and say hello. Oh, hello. It's the Michelangelo thing about the angel in the marble, is like, oh, hello.
Yeah.
Hello, angel in there.
I love that you mentioned improv also, because after I got involved in speaking circles, I joined an improv group for a little while. It was very low key, but I think there's a lot of overlap with speaking circles, improv, mindfulness, all of those things, which it's really kind of about getting out of your head. And with the improv, there's like a playfulness to it. How do you feel like the improv helped shape what you do too?
I would say that the improv was probably so much more valuable than any speaker kind of training, because there's so much permission to just be in the moment. And to me, that's what mindfulness is coming fully into the moment, aware of everything, what's inside, what's outside, and not, well, even fear could be there if you're, but I think improv gave me the permission to be spontaneous in the moment, and not be judging myself. I know that there was a time when you have to go tap somebody and take their position, and I don't know, I was pulling up something, I guess, and I just went, oh shoot, I can't say I'm pulling up a banana. Like a big fish or something. So, in that moment, I said, "Oh, this banana is so heavy," and everybody laughed, and that was a shocker for me, that I would say something so ridiculous, so silly, so nonsensical, and people would enjoy that moment or laugh. So I think that was a breakthrough moment for me too, in and there was many, I think, in improv training classes, is the freedom, I think, is finally feeling free to express whatever comes up. I mean, yeah, eventually you have to know who your listener is, and you don't just say anything,
Yeah.
really. I mean, that's part of mindfulness, I think, is speaking in a way that you're realizing you've got a listener in front of you, not that you hold back, but that there's a way in which you speak that is with. There's a witness when you're speaking to a person or to a group of people.
Yeah. It's funny how I really think that improv is very much a personal growth exercise as much as anything else. When I first tried it, I've never thought of acting. I never Acting was like one of the few art forms that just
Mhm.
never that I never connected to personally. And so I never considered doing improv because I'm like, I'm not interested in acting. And then actually the way that I got into it was my word for that year was spontaneity. And I realized, oh, that's a practice in spontaneity. And I knew it kind of piggybacked off of the speaking circles work too. and I wanted to get more playful and learn how to play as an adult in a different way. But what I learned was how vulnerable it is. Once I did it, I was like, oh, wow, this is really vulnerable. And that's also a common thread in mindfulness and speaking circles, is just being able to, like, when you're really present and opening up to whatever is there, it can be really vulnerable. And if people aren't used to that, that can send some people in the opposite direction. So I think that having that safe container is, it's just, it really helps allow that vulnerability to express.
Right, right. And both, I like the word you use, container, and that speaking circle is a container. And also, I think the improv classes, when done really in a safe way, is a container. And then I think that finding your voice, what I provide people who are on the journey to be more expressed, is a safe container. I just think that is really crucial to any kind of personal expression, personal development, personal growth, and even meditation practice. It feels like we have a container, however you practice, feels like there's a sense of, I'm in this now moment and I'm doing this, not doing, it's a being, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, being with this now moment and opening up myself to what is here now. And I think the speaking circle, the improv, and the Find Your Voice program is about then the find your voice. If you can be in the now and you do feel more free, which would be from improv, then the speaking, your what you notice, and speaking in a way that's got compassion in it or clarity, so that speaking becomes, I think, way more possible for people because they are more able to be mindful, be present in this now moment, and to be spontaneous.
Yeah, and I think safety is, if someone feels safe, it's like you can do almost anything if you feel safe, right? It's like that on a deeper level, it's not feeling safe on some level that holds people back from so many things, whatever it is in their life. And speaking is a huge one, and using your voice is a huge one for a lot of people. And I think that's why these practices are so powerful, is because when you have a really solid container of or boundaries, then ironically it sort of allows you to have this freedom to do anything, where you might think it's the opposite, like if there's too much rigid structure, that someone might think that could be confining, but I think it offers so much freedom.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, so there are a few things I want to dive into. So I'll start with communication in general. I just think it's one of the most important things in all areas of our lives. And I'm curious what you have to say about why presence is important for communication.
I think that presence to me means that you come, I'm doing this, I'm taking my fingers and coming down into a inside of more of my core right here. That's where I experience, and we used that word experience earlier, that there's an experience of being right here, right now, in this now moment. And openness, I think, is important to bring to a conversation, because that's what we're talking about in terms of communication. We aren't necessarily talking about giving a speech, we're talking about communicating. And so that right here, right now, if I am in tune with all of what's happening for me as I enter into, let's just say, a conversation, then I can know myself so much more about what it is that I'm feeling, what I know, what I want to contribute, what I want to say. It's just huge. It's just huge being in the moment and being in this particular presence with somebody or with a group. And then one of my words for this year is truth. Is how do I know what's true? What is true for me? And then communicating it is a whole nother aspect of knowing myself. So I could know that what I want to say is, hey, you know, I don't know, I could give some examples. I just had a session with somebody this morning, and it's a relationship issue where she needs to say something to her partner, and in our work, she's really clear now that she is what she has to say. But then how do you open up a space with somebody so that there's listening also on the other side, not just a speaking to, but so how do you do that? You might say something like, I've been thinking about whatever it was the issue is, and I'd like to open up a conversation with you to talk about it. So, like, how do you enter into communication? To me, feels like part of communication. And then not only just then the expression, it's noticing how, and this is mindfulness, I think, noticing how the person received it. If you're really in this now moment, you're also with yourself, but you're also with the person who just received your whatever communication you have, or even in a group, you've just communicated something and you're noticing. That's what mindfulness is. You're noticing what was it received or not. And you could say, boy, what I just said seemed to not land. I mean, there's so many ways in which then it opens up another different kind of conversation or communication. I guess that's my answer to what you're asking about in terms of mindfulness, communication, and using your voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love that you touched on what I'm sure we would both agree is one of the most important aspects of communication, which is listening. And people don't really think about that because they think communication is talking in words, but so much of communication is listening. I think it's delivering information and receiving information is really the core of communication. Yeah, and that's such a huge part of speaking circles too. We go over that when we begin. We tell people that the listener is it's the foundation of the whole thing.
Yes, yeah. The way, and in fact, in the process of speaking circles, that's what we say, is that you're here perhaps in this program to learn to be more comfortable speaking, but you as a listener are also learning something brand new, how to be in this world with deeper kind of listening more for quality of presence as opposed to listening for content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so I want to dive into some more complex issues around the voice, and I would love to get your input on this perspective. So, for me, I'll start when I was a young child. I used to idolize my older sister, and I wanted to look like her, I wanted to be like her, and a lot of times when I would answer the phone, people would think I was her, which I just thought was the best thing in the world, that I sounded like my teenage sister. And so I leaned into that a lot, and I really mirrored her in so many ways, but especially with my voice and with the way that I spoke, the tones, the inflections, the everything about my voice, I really modeled after hers at a very young age because I just wanted to be like her. And when people mistook me for her on the phone, I just thought that was the best thing anybody could say. And as an adult, especially as I've embarked on my own finding my voice journey, I notice that I don't know if you've ever heard there's a meme that's gone around the internet that says sometimes I open my mouth and my mother comes out.
Oh, no, I haven't heard that.
Okay, so every time I've seen that, I think, oh, sometimes I open my mouth and my sister comes out. And I still, to this day, even though I've done years of therapy and done the speaking circles work, I still, when I'm talking, I hear her so much. And
I got to a point in my teenage years where I did kind of a 180 where I was like, no, 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 I'm my own person. Like, I don't want to be like that at all. And in my own, journey with therapy and all of that, I went deeper into trying to find who I really am. But I still, to this day, when I hear myself talk, I'll hear her. And when I'm around her, it's even stronger. Like, I just naturally kind of go that way. And for me, it actually makes me sad because I'm like, I don't know what my true voice is because it's her that I hear when I come out. And so I have my own thoughts around that, but I would, because I'm sure there are other people that feel that way and probably don't even have the language for it or realize it. And I'm just curious your perspective on something like that when
Yeah.
it comes to finding your own voice.
Well, first of all, it seems like that which is out there in the world, like that meme that you just mentioned, it wouldn't catch my eye because I don't have that issue, right? So that was my first thought, that what we see out there and what catches our attention is something we're still working on, or has some meaning for us because we can relate to it, and that you just described it perfectly. So in terms of early on, it feels like what we call enmeshment, because
Mhm.
because voice doesn't just happen. Voice comes from a state of being, and you so took on the being of your sister because it wasn't just her voice. And that kind of touches me, really. It makes me kind of sad that that you inhabited her beingness and took it on in such a way that the voice that came out of you was probably, it wasn't just a mimic, it was actually energetically. This is kind of a deeper conversation, but
I'm happy to go deep. That's my jam.
yeah, well, the energetics of merging,
Yeah.
we call it enmeshment, but merging with her beingness, so that, because I don't think you could just pretend to be her and have a voice. I think you really, from who you are as a sensitive person and who I am as a sensitive person, I can recognize, I would say that that's was the that's how you found her voice, was by being her as best as you could, because you absorbed it energetically. And so now you're talking about when you open your mouth, you hear. So I'm thinking, well, I mean, I'm thinking, well, you've integrated her into your own being, maybe. Maybe it
Oh,
isn't
wow.
her, you, but maybe there might be a woven into you that is truly, maybe truly you. I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting because that's part of my thoughts on it is that we are the sum total of all of our life experiences. I wouldn't be who I am without every single
Yeah.
person I've ever met, every experience I've ever had. So it's all a part of who I am now.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I feel like I've come to know myself really well. And yet I still wonder, like, what would I sound like if she had never existed? Who's like, maybe I would have more of my parents' voice, or maybe I would have more of a voice of my schoolyard friends, or I don't know. It's very curious for me, but do you, because I think so much of what you do is finding your own deeper, it's not just your voice, it's a deeper sense of self, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yes.
And
Uh-huh.
so for someone
Okay.
who's done a lot of this work, do you
Uh-huh.
have any advice, or maybe there isn't any, maybe the answer is just this is who I am, but do you have advice on discovering my own sound of my voice, I guess, in a different way?
Well, remember what I said about the sound comes from the being.
Mhm.
And I do like the idea that we just came up with, the interwovenness of all life experience makes you who you are, the being of who you are, so that the voice comes from there. But if we want to go even like into, well, what does it really mean to be in your own, we'll call it soul, spirit, essence, that is way I'm just thinking about this out loud with you, Julia, right now. I don't want to use this word, but it's coming up, unadulterated. That's just the purity of presence of you. Does it really have a voice? And I would say yes, that there's an aliveness in it. There's a spirit, a preciousness, a quality that is really like your own precious jewel. Maybe I talk about that sometimes in speaking circles with essence appreciation, is that the quality that shines. I mean, like if you were totally silent, there's a vibration or a radiance of you, and knowing and claiming that radiance, I think, is deeper than this other idea where we came, that all life experience is me. So it would be like mindful of what's the feel or the sensation. And maybe like if we're talking on that level, when you open your mouth and it's the sound of your sister or somebody else, it's like, oh, okay, that just came out. It's not really as, but it's okay. It's like everything's okay, but, and not a but, and I know what it feels like to anchor into my own truth. And I know the sound and the feel and the experience of the quality that is truly just mine. Wow.
That actually sort of is a good segue into the other thing that I wanted to talk about with you, which I think has some branches. But I'm sure that in your experience, in all of your experience, you can tell when someone is speaking from an authentic place versus a performative place. And I feel like even if it's just, not public speaking, but having a conversation with someone, I can feel it, how embodied they are in themselves versus how much they're trying to be something other than what they are. And to me, I feel like it's this like energetic wall that's like they're keeping me at arm's length with their voice. Do you ever feel that?
Huh. I guess maybe in my circles right
Yeah.
now, and where I am in my life down the road a ways here, and who I surround myself with, I don't experience that. But I can now, where I'm thinking of, well, where might I experience that? Sometimes it might be like in a networking event,
Hmm.
uh,
Hmm.
where the actual kind of who are you really kind of, or are you trying to come across as the elevator pitch or something.
Yeah.
And so there's the, am I aware of that? That was kind of the question. But then there's also, when I'm aware of it, what do I do with it?
Hmm.
Um, I'm remembering a time when I was at a conference and I was sitting next to somebody and they were just, I'm using my fingers, blah, 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 blah.
Hmm.
And I realized that I was being talked at, not with, because I know the feeling of withness. If somebody is open and we have this channel of open communication. And so what I chose to do at that moment is go into just deep, heartful listening to this person who is blabbing. And I realized, okay, this is a moment in my life where I'm just letting the river flow, the river of their words, their whatever was going on with them. And at the end of the it wasn't really truly conversation because I was just being deep listener. And they, and it brings up some emotion with me right now, is that they'd never been listened like that. That's partly why they had to keep talking, 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 talking until I was going to say until I was blue in the face, but I wasn't blue in the face. I was feeling into their, actually, I'll go into it. I was feeling into their pain. They must have some pain that they need to command that much attention. So afterwards they said to me, boy, I mean, they started to come more into presence by me being more in presence, right? You understand what I mean by that, I think. And it turned out to be more rich. Not that I got space to say who I was or what I had to contribute, but it was neat to feel like I could help shift somebody's self-awareness, that they were able to feel a transformation by the way that they had been listened. I just made an agreement with myself. I wasn't going to sit with the person the next day because I know that they would want to gravitate to me, which they did, and I was not available for it. I just made good boundary.
I love that you talked about your presence sort of helped them, because I do think that makes a difference. And once I've learned all this stuff and experienced this stuff about finding my own voice, and I tend to look at things through a psychological lens anyway. And so that's when I started to just notice so much about the voice and other people's voices, and that feeling of, certain voices, some people might call it their phone voice, or, certain voices I feel like
Uh-huh.
put people at arm's length, but that presence, it draws people in. And that can be so powerful, whether you're speaking or listening or whatever it is. It's just, it puts down the walls.
Uh-huh. Yeah. It feels like we could continue on this pretend that we're talking or listening to each other, is what it feels like. Or for those of us who have more capacity or awareness of what's going on right here, right now, I think we can shift. I mean, I probably could have said something, but I didn't, because it didn't feel like there was a listening on the other side, that they really could hear what I had to say about, ooh, right now it feels like it wasn't really up to me to give back my observation. So that I think that goes to what we're talking about also, is how do you communicate, and when do you communicate, and what's the point of communicating?
Yeah, one question I use in all of that is I ask myself, or if I'm working with someone, I remind them to ask themselves, is it necessary?
Uh-huh.
Is it necessary to communicate that? I know you want to,
Good.
but is it necessary? Can it
Good.
just be?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Nice. Yeah. That's a good a good kind of coming back to what's the point. I love that phrase. Is it necessary? Is it necessary?
And so the other branch that I wanted to go down with that is something else I've noticed about my own voice and in other people's, is sometimes I can pick up on certain emotions in people's voice just in the way that they're talking. Like sometimes when I listen to myself, I think, oh my God, I sound defensive. Like I sound like, and I'm just having a conversation with someone. But if it's recorded, or, if I hear myself back, I think, oh my God, there's such a defensiveness in my voice. That's so interesting. And I've picked up on that particular emotion in other people when I've heard them speak. And sometimes I'll just pick up, oh, that person has a lot of buried anger, or, I mean, I think a lot of us do. But so, yeah, I'm curious if you were nodding your head. So it sounds like you've noticed that as well.
Well, the awareness, because I think as sensitive, I think mindfulness contributes to us being way more sensitive, our tuning forks, for those of us who are already out there picking up Sometimes people call it empath, but I think but I think also for the being able to ground ourselves. I mean, it is I guess, like a tuning fork. Are you just tuning, and kind of making yourself crazy? Or can you really stay centered and grounded and at the same time tune in? So that to me feels like the magic of mindfulness, that we can do both. And in that practicing of breathing and coming into this now moment, grounding into the now moment, but also opening up to what's in the now moment. And then, is it necessary to speak in this now moment? Is lots of choices to be made, right? So I think in terms of noticing what is around us, that I mean, there's this whole idea of, do we react or do we respond? You've probably heard that phrase too, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, are we able to catch ourselves reacting and instead make choices about how we're going to respond to what we're noticing?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's interesting. It's just this exploration of the voice. There's so much to explore in it. In practice and in observation and musing and all of it. I think it's a fascinating subject.
Good.
And I'm happy to be able to discuss this with you. So thank you. I would love to know what you have going on, but before we go there, do you have anything particular about the voice that you just feel like needs to be said, needs to be shared right now, and
Well,
about what you do?
I think in this journey with you today, you know, not knowing really what will be revealed, I think I really like this idea that when we were talking about our life experience coming together as being, yeah, that's, I guess you might say, that is who we are, but who we are at a deeper level is much more coming from source and the essence. So I feel like I'm walking away today with a reminder of that, and that where we're speaking from and who we're speaking with and how we are communicating is, I think mindfulness is key to knowing ourselves, awareness of who we are in this now moment, and being able to be fully present. To me, means being grounded and centered. It just doesn't mean being totally overwhelmed by all the input that I'm getting. It means, I could take a breath and be in the center of this now moment, but very strong in it, because I'm connected to something very deep inside of myself, because I know how to tap down into it.
Yes, yes, yes. And so, with that said, if people want to work with you, how can they find you? What do you have to offer them? What would you like to share about how people can work with you?
Well, I think the first place that people, and maybe the only place, is DoreenDowning.com, DoreenDowning.com, which is my website. And there you find freebies, and you find how to work with me individually in a one-to-one mentorship program that I've got, that's anywhere from 3 to 6 months down the line, where they get access to all of videos that I give, get access to me weekly in my mentorship program, but also if they just want to have one session, that's possible. And then there's all sorts of YouTube playlists, my podcast. I have a lot that is out there, and people could go from free to a program that's several $1,000s. So there's lots in between, and lots available that I can provide help in overcoming fear and finding your voice so that you can speak up in any situation, whether it's one-on-one or in a large group. Because I like to say that life is your stage.
I love that. And I'll just add my own testimonial that that working with Doreen is wonderful, and for anyone who is wanting to find their voice or work on their speaking or communication in any context, I think they should definitely go looking for you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So thank you so much for being here and having this conversation with me. And yeah, everyone go check out DoreenDowning.com.
If you are feeling burnt out or overwhelmed with your life, with the world, with anything, and you're wanting to make a big change in your life and just wanting to learn how to manage the messiness of life and these crazy times, I am going to be teaching the mindfulness-based stress reduction program, which is an 8-week evidence-based program designed to help manage things like chronic stress, chronic pain, chronic illness, addiction, eating disorders, blood pressure, all kinds of things, and just to help with a general sense of well-being. The program completely changed my life, and I have gone to school to learn how to teach it, and now I am teaching it. I will be co-teaching this session with Danielle Brockman of the Let Go Cure, and this is going to be starting on June 1st is the orientation, and then the classes begin on June 8th. And the 8-week program includes a day-long retreat. And this is all online, virtual. So you can do it wherever you are, from the comfort of your own home, if you're traveling, whatever. So check out my website, themessymeditator.com, and think about joining. It might just change your life.